Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to this platform performance at the National Theatre. I'm Matt Wolfe, the London theatre critic of the International New York Times, and it's my great honor today to chair and to introduce our guests, the leading players in Antony and Cleopatra, Ralph Fiennes and Sophie Okonedo. Starting with the genesis of this production, this is probably, Ralph, in my experience of this play, the first time ever that I've heard of an Antony and Cleopatra happening where the Antony was announced first. Because normally you hear so-and-so is going to play Cleopatra, and then Antony comes along later. So tell us about kind of your, it's true, tell us about your kind of connection to this production from the very beginning.
Well, I think it was announced quite a long time ago, actually, about 2 or 3 years ago.
It was.
Because Simon Godwin, who directed this, he and I worked together on Man and Superman in the Littleton, and on the back of that we talked about doing something else, and we held a read-through of a couple of plays, Antony and Cleopatra being one of them, and I think we both felt this was the one to pursue.
So how did it go from you and Antony and Cleopatra to Sophie? How did you?
Well, obviously, once we were committed to it, and it was a real commitment, then it was obviously essential question.
Yeah.
And I think Sophie's name came up almost immediately in our discussions.
Well, I think it couldn't get any better, really, because Ralph, the National, Simon, the kind of ingredients for a really good cake. So I just thought, I mean, the role's been offered to me before, but this was the time that I think that it was just perfect.
Ralph, had you, with your extensive Shakespearean resume, been circling this role for a while, or did it sort of surprise you as a part?
I saw the Tony Hopkins Judi Dench production here. I was acting here at the time in another company. I was very, very profoundly moved by it and them and the play, and it always sat with me. And I had then subsequently seen it, and when I had a bit more awareness of, I don't know, a bit more, my mind a bit more receptive, I suppose, to what was going on in a Shakespeare play. And then I think I saw Mark Rylance do it with Paul Shelley at the Globe, and I thought, wow, that part is really extraordinary. And so I think, yes, I love the role. I mean, I think it's got an amazing arc in it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many sides of Antony, aren't there? There's the soldier, the sensualist, the feeling of somebody who's nearing the end of a life, a career, a romance. What was your sort of feeling about these facets?
Well, there's juxtapositions I think you're talking about. So sort of declining masculinity and a sort of a man who's been very virile and it's all kind of leaving him, and this incredible love, erotic connection with Cleopatra. And I think the way Shakespeare charts his own awareness of his demise and what he gets to say as he sort of literally sees his success. He's aware of fortune leaving him. Fortune and Antony part here. Even here do we shake hands. He knows it's happening. I find that incredibly moving, and I just think the language for both of them. I mean, I find when Sophie's, I'm dead, and Sophie's speech, yes. I'm often sort of crying inside as I hear it.
Yes, that last act of Cleopatra is pretty amazing, but it also has one practical thing, Sophie, which is that you've got to navigate the snake. How do you do that?
It's pretty easy, actually. I think I don't have a fear of them, so that probably makes it quite easy, and they're quite lovely. When I met with Simon a long time before we started rehearsing, we both agreed that sort of getting a rubber snake out at the end would just kill it. And a friend of a friend who just lives right near here has snakes as pets, so I just went and, before we started, or during rehearsals, I can't remember, but I thought I'll go and check it out to see if I'm scared of them. And I wasn't. So then we didn't really rehearse them hardly at all until we just went up, opened, and they just do their own thing. And
did they behave?
They have different moods, but when women, similar to myself. Sometimes they're more, frisky, and other times They're more sleepy. So.
How many snakes are there?
There's four, and we rotate, and they're different sizes. And, yeah, so you never know. I like not knowing how things are going to.
And you
turn
just
out.
greet each one each night, and it's like,
I
oh,
do
it's
my
that
warm
one.
up with them,
Okay.
sort of around my neck. One, I mean not several, but
Yes. 4 snakes all dangling.
yeah. But I've got so used to it, I don't even think about it. So.
So tell us about how you begin to approach this extraordinary character who is, after all, exalted for her infinite variety.
I'd never seen a production of it before, other than Carry On film. So that was. I did say to Simon, when do I roll out the carpet? And he went to the wrong era. I was like, okay. So it was really nice for me because I had that kind of just blank slate. But to be fair, when I read it, I thought, well, yeah, I get everything she's saying. I really understand the way she switches around, which says more about me than anything else. But I didn't really have a problem with it. And the thing about doing a play, which is different from filming, and doing it for a long time, is that sort of layers are peeled away all the time, and also depending on what mood I'm in, different qualities are shown each night. So, and I think that's for both of us, that it's never really. You'd just be completely bored if you just went and banged out the same old show every night.
Rafe, you were in Julius Caesar, of course, at the Barbican in 2005. Hard to believe because it feels much more recent. Was it helpful playing this Antony, having played that Antony?
I think it was. I didn't try to. I suppose the characteristics of the young Antony, I can make my own connection that it connects to this one. He's playable as someone who's out on the town enjoying himself and is surprised and shocked by the murder of Caesar, and then suddenly coheres the people, and he's got access to vocabulary. He can take words, and it's the same in this. He's effective with language. But I wasn't conscious. I wasn't trying to consciously reference the other production when we were rehearsing.
Yeah. What's extraordinary in this play is the sort of self-aggrandizement of the characters, both to themselves and also to one another, the grandeur of the language, the exalted nature of the language. Sophie, I thought on press night, the way your performance was so prickly and funny and witty, and then, of course, becomes something altogether different as Cleopatra seems to almost ascend. Can you just talk a little bit about Cleopatra's qualities as a performer? She often seems to be performing.
Yeah, I sort of thought that there was no kind of. She's always on it. I didn't really think about that. There was this is the Cleopatra when she's doing this, and she constantly is on a show. I didn't really feel there was any public and private. That everything's
on display
all the time. Although the other night, sort of a funny thing happened where we were doing the show, and I was going along doing it, and then after you died, just suddenly, it probably wasn't perhaps the right thing to do, but just I did the whole last act just as myself, in my own voice. No, I didn't even do a sort of Cleopatra. It was much quieter than normal. That just seemed to occur to me that moment that perhaps everything had dropped then. But then I didn't do it again the next show, so.
Right. It's amazing, Sophie, to think that your Shakespearean debut was on this stage 20 years ago as Cressida, and then here you are back on the same stage, which can be a pretty daunting stage, but obviously not for you. How does it feel to you occupying the Olivier?
Well, I don't think Cleopatra could have had a smaller stage. I think this is only just big enough. To be honest with you, I haven't done any other Shakespeare between. So.
Which was amazing. So your whole Shakespeare career is on...
No, I've only done this.
Yeah,
I don't really...
Yeah.
I was at the RSC, but I didn't do any Shakespeare while I was there. Isn't that weird? This is my only... This and on telly.
So were you a little cautious about Shakespeare or just waiting for the right thing?
Well, to be honest with you, I would have been a bit cautious, but because I did The Hollow Crown on television the year before, it kind of gave me a bit of a... I was less nervous about it because I'd worked a lot with Jeanette, who's our wonderful voice person, head of voice here, and I worked with her actually on Hollow Crown, and I literally didn't know anything about iambic pentameter or anything, or I didn't know anything at all the first time around I did it. And then this time I did learn a lot, and I was just much more confident about it, and I had much more time to pore over the language, and just became. Now I just want to do loads and loads of Shakespeare. You know, it's come late in life, but you know, I just want to do lots of it. It's just completely incredible language.
What do you feel about the Olivier for Shakespeare and for work in general? It seems to be a natural habitat for you.
It's tough because it's very wide, so you're easily cutting off. If I'm facing you, then these people will get my back, and so you have to. We talked about it with Ian McKellen. Actually, he said, "Oh, that stage is so wide," and now I feel very comfortable on it, having worked it in. But I think coming back to it was quite a shock. I find it a constant, exciting challenge to find the intimacy here on the stage, and I know from being in the audience, you love it when you reach in, you see a conversation which you're eavesdropping.
Rafe, when you and Sam were talking about doing this play, did you have a feeling about when to set it, how to set it, to have video footage in it, all of that?
I think we definitely agreed, and I feel pretty strongly that Shakespeare in modern dress is a good thing. I feel that behaviourally, you're in clothes, can be in chairs like this, and you're accessing the essential emotions and discourse. Simon, I think quite rightly said, well, we do computers and mobile phones and all that, so it's a sort of simplified modernity. When we have our Egyptian camouflage, it is the camouflage of the current Egyptian army. When we have our dress uniforms as Romans, it is the current dress uniform of the Italian army, navy and air force. So Simon made this very clear commitment to today, and just taking away kind of some trappings that could be fussy or gimmicky, I suppose. You know, I think really it's important to keep younger people engaged with Shakespeare and feel it's accessible, and they're looking at a world that is close to their world. And I think, bluntly speaking, I think if people are in like this, and we started speaking Shakespeare, you know, conversation, suddenly it can come alive. But if you've got tights and hose and doublets and ruffs and things, just my personal taste, I think that's tired. And so you're basically, you sort of field imagery that is suggestive of things that are happening today, without making any heavy-handed, this is meant to be the Iraq War, this is meant to be the Arab Spring, or not that. It's just you, the audience, make your own connections. We offer up a kind of modernity out of which you can make the connections to ancient Rome as well. I mean, I still have references about cockfighting in it, which we keep in, which I like.
Because I think one of the things this production really achieves is a sort of scenic through line, which can be very hard with this play. What was your feeling about it, Sophie, just visually and in your costume terms? Did it feel quite natural to be...
Well, I had a big say in my costumes, because I made my own storyboard sort of months before we started. Because I'd been thinking about who now would be like Cleopatra. I always think about that anyway whenever I'm doing something. Who would I relate to? Who is their performance them? Is that their life, or is this just performance? And so obviously I thought about Beyonce, because you know, she's constantly using her marriage, and you know, is it performance? You know, I saw a shot of her on the back of a motorbike with Jay-Z. It's somewhere in the Caribbean, and she would just look absolutely amazing, these little shorts and jacket. And I thought, was that her setting up that photograph, or was it a paparazzi? You know, and then I looked a lot at Grace Jones. I looked at Nina Simone, was a person I thought 0 to 60, and then I made a sort of montage of all these costumes, and I went quite extreme and looked at kind of Gareth Pugh and kind of really avant-garde costumes, but I mean, I don't think you'd be able to move in some of them. They're like concrete, you know. And then when Evie came on board, I just gave, and she took the storyboard and just flew with it, and then I got those amazing costumes.
What about your Antony visually, Rafe? Because he's quite distinctive looking.
But the biggest puzzle was, what is Antony wearing at the beginning when he's in Egypt? Because he's let himself go. They talk of him as being a strumpet's fool. So how much truth in that is there? And there was all kinds of talks of kind of galabayas or flowing robes or even a dress at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But we came up with these Thai fisherman's trousers, which have a skirt-like effect, and they're very, very comfortable. And I know some people haven't liked them, other people have liked them.
They're great.
But I really, but that was the puzzle, because he comes on and it's Antony, and but he's a man who's letting him sort of let himself go, or something. What is Antony in Egypt?
The two of you have such a great chemistry together that it's kind of fantastic, and one wonders where that's arisen from. But
Do you know what? I think chemistry is one of those things you have no idea whether you're going to have it or not. It's one of those things you just can't manufacture. I always think it's funny when people talk about it. It just happens. I mean, it's more likely to happen if you've got, say, two good actors doing something, but it's just one of those things.
It's brilliant playing with Sophie. It's most exciting to be on stage with her, and I think we just chuck each other different stuff every night, and it feels really fantastic to be on the receiving end of the stuff that she offers, and it's really,
same.
And I think that's something that we haven't talked about it. We've just enjoyed.
Yeah, we don't discuss it or anything afterwards.
how are you feeling as the characters are approaching the end of their lives in the play? You're approaching the end of the run. How is that feeling? Regretful, relief, ready for a holiday? What? You can be honest.
I feel quite emotional.
I think it's been a very emotional thing for us, and I think we both admit being tired. I think we will feel very sad when we let go of it. I don't know whether the production will revive. I think it's probably unlikely. So I think it will be emotional, as Sophie says.
Given that you both have thriving screen careers, can you just say a bit about why you returned to the theater? I mean, Rafe, it's so, I think, continually amazing to those of us who love the stage and who've loved you on the stage. You don't need to do the theater, but it's obviously part of who you are.
I do need to do it.
To.
I feel I wanted to be an actor because of the theatre and because of Shakespeare, really. My ambition when I went to audition for drama school, I thought, I just want to be doing Shakespeare and hopefully know the great parts. When I meet people, young people particularly, who come and quite early on, some young people, friends of friends, or people I didn't know, but people in their 20s who had never seen a Shakespeare, let alone Antony and Cleopatra, to feel that they had connected and were moved and had really seen that meant everything. That feels like that's why one does it. And also to feel that people are moved. And as an audience member, I love when you're affected by a play and that thing of actors giving something that's a one-off that time, in that space, at that moment. You're taken out of yourself and enter into another world. And I would feel at a loss if, for some reason, I stopped going onto a stage.
Well, so would we. When you were growing up, was there a first sort of Shakespeare performance that really ignited you?
My mother had an old LP of Laurence Olivier doing famous speeches from Hamlet and Henry V, and she put it on when I was about... My first introduction to Shakespeare was my mother told me a bedtime story. In her own words, she told me the story of Hamlet. And I was about 8 or 9, and I was completely transfixed. I mean, the way... a ghost and your mum's cheating on your dad, and it's all. And then and then the next day she said, "He's a very famous actor, and these are the speeches." And I listened. I didn't understand, but this voice, and these words, and then she gave me. I think I could read then, so she gave me a penguin, and I could start to follow the text. So I've always found Shakespeare like another person might find music, jazz, motorbikes exciting. Shakespeare does it for me. And I don't mean poetic, I mean Shakespeare is us, it's visceral, it's immediate. It's about our bodies and our lives, and it's about living and dying, and it's everything. It's not, oh, beautiful Shakespeare, oh, poetic this and that. It's just some extraordinary force that's really thrilling. And I guess I've seen all kinds of different Shakespeares, and one knows there's lots of Shakespeares that doesn't work, and it's always it's a risk, and the language is continually more challenged because the vocabulary is more and more. We're more challenged by so many words being not used and not recognised, and so there's always the question of editing text and how they're accessible. And what I love about this production is we haven't overcut it, and there are phrases and things that are still challenging. And I love the fact that we haven't sacrificed for everything for sort of accessibility.
Sophie, do you remember an early exposure to Shakespeare? Or was he not really part of your life growing up, and you came to him later?
Yeah, I mostly came to Shakespeare later, but I did have a very early experiences. My granddad, he very much liked, he was a big reader, and he very much liked poetry. I remember him reading me sonnets when I was very young, so I think somehow it must have gone in, and he'd make me read them back, even though I could barely get them out. But so I remember, because I used to live with them half the time, you know, on the weekends when my mum was working. So I have, but not just Shakespeare. I mean, he would get me to read a lot of poetry, but so that was quite, I think, an early exposure, which came back later, which you don't really notice at the time.
But it's also what you were saying is if this experience has really fed your appetite to do some more Shakespeare, it won't be another 20 years between Cressida and Cleopatra.
No, it won't. It won't. But I don't think I could have played Cleopatra even the year before I played it. I was just right to play it now. I wouldn't have. I'm just at the right age. I've had just the right experiences to play her now. And any earlier 5 years ago, I would have lost something.
Rafe, do you have a Shakespearean wish list that you keep in your head?
I would like to do Prospero again. I did it once, it was great, but I'd love to do it again. I think that play, I mean the part is great, but I think the play is so magical and extraordinary, and just so, that speaks to me. Yeah.
Well, you could hear, as you mentioned that, a kind of semi-purr of approval from the audience. So clearly there are 1,200 people here ready to see that. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.